Picture this. It's May 8th, 1945. Inside a small schoolhouse in Reims, France, a German general enters a room full of Allied commanders. His hands are visibly shaking, his face pale. In his briefcase, he carries the document that will officially end the most devastating war humanity has ever known. But here's the crazy part. This monumental surrender wasn't the result of some massive final battle for Berlin. It wasn't won by a single heroic army charging the Reichstag. The real story of how America helped break Nazi Germany is far more complex, much more fascinating, and honestly, a lot more brutal than most history books will ever tell you. You see, we've all heard the simplified narrative. D-Day happened, the Allies heroically pushed through France, and then boom, Germany just collapsed. But that's like saying a giant tree fell just because someone gave it a final push, completely ignoring the years of relentless storms that rotted its roots and weakened its trunk. Today, we're diving deep into the real, often overlooked strategies that the United States used to dismantle the Nazi war machine from the inside out. I'm not just talking about battlefield tactics. I'm talking about a level of industrial warfare that will absolutely make your head spin. We'll explore the economic strangulation, the secret intelligence operations so clever they sound like they were ripped straight from a Hollywood spy movie, and the relentless air campaign that systematically erased Germany's ability to fight. We're going to uncover how American factories running 24/7 churned out more planes, tanks, and ships than all the Axis powers combined, literally burying the Third Reich under a mountain of steel. We'll look at the strategic decisions, some brilliant, others absolutely horrifying, that were made in the highest corridors of power. These choices not only crippled Germany's industry, but also shaped the world we live in today. So, get ready, because what you're about to learn will completely change how you view the end of World War II in Europe. This is the story of how an economic and industrial giant brought a military empire to its knees. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss this. Let's rewind the clock to 1941. After Pearl Harbor, America enters the war, and things look grim. Nazi Germany is at its absolute peak, controlling most of Europe. Their military is the most advanced fighting force on the planet, and they genuinely believe they're going to win. But there's one thing Hitler completely, catastrophically underestimated: America's ability to build stuff. Germany was a military powerhouse, but America was an industrial superpower, and that difference was everything. Here's a mind-blowing statistic for you. In 1944 alone, the United States produced more ammunition than all the Axis powers combined produced during the entire war. We're talking 41 billion rounds of small arms ammunition. 40 billion. That's enough to shoot every person on Earth 6 times over. But it gets even crazier. American factories were churning out a new B-24 Liberator bomber every 63 minutes. A new ship every single day. Tanks were rolling off assembly lines in Detroit like they were Chevrolets. This wasn't just quantity over quality. These were top-tier weapons, constantly being improved. The Nazis called it Materialschlacht, the battle of materials. And they knew they were losing it. This wasn't just about making more guns. The US turned capitalism into a weapon. America didn't just join the war, we industrialized it. Now, let's talk about something controversial. The bombing of Germany. You've probably heard of D-Day, the massive invasion on June 6, 1944. But what many people don't realize is that by the time those soldiers hit the beaches, the United States had already been systematically dismantling Germany from the air for over a year. The 8th Air Force, based in England, was running daylight bombing raids deep into German territory. Imagine hundreds of bombers flying in broad daylight right into the heart of the Third Reich, targeting factories, oil refineries, and rail lines. It was insanely dangerous. German anti-aircraft fire was brutal, and their fighter pilots were some of the best in the world. On some missions, American bomber crews had a 25% chance of being shot down, a 1 in 4 chance you wouldn't come home from work. But here's the secret weapon that broke Germany: precision targeting of oil. In 1944, American planners identified Germany's Achilles heel: petroleum. The Nazi war machine ran on oil, most of it from synthetic fuel plants. So what did the US do? They bombed them, over and over again. By late 1944, German fuel production had plummeted by 90%. Think about what that means. Luftwaffe pilots were grounded because there was no fuel for their planes. Panzer divisions couldn't move their tanks. The entire German military was being strangled, not by soldiers on the ground, but by bomber crews 30,000 feet in the air. As one German general later admitted, "The enemy has succeeded in increasing our losses in such a way that we cannot replace them." Translation: you broke us, and we can't fix it. All right, let's talk about D-Day. We all know it was a pivotal moment, but the story behind it is even more incredible than you think. By June 1944, the Allies were about to do something no one had pulled off since 1066, successfully invade mainland Europe from the sea. This wasn't just about courage on the beaches, though there was plenty of that. It was a masterpiece of planning, deception, and pure logistical power. Ever heard of Operation Fortitude? It was a brilliant Allied plan to trick Hitler into thinking the main invasion would be at Calais, not Normandy. And it was pure genius. The Allies created a completely fake army, the first U.S. Army group, led by the famous General Patton. They built inflatable tanks, dummy airplanes, and filled the airwaves with fake radio chatter. They even used double agents to feed false intel directly to the Germans. The deception worked so well that even after the Normandy landings began, Hitler held back his best divisions at Calais for weeks, convinced Normandy was just a diversion. But once the boots hit the sand, it was American industrial might that truly turned the tide. In the first week alone, the U.S. landed more troops, supplies, and equipment than the Germans thought possible. Soon after, the Allies built massive artificial ports called mulberry harbors, capable of unloading thousands of tons of supplies every single day. This relentless flow of resources fueled the breakout. Operation Cobra in late July shattered the German lines. American forces didn't just push the Germans back, they encircled and annihilated entire armies. By September, Paris was liberated, and the Allies were knocking on Germany's door. Now, for a story that was top secret for decades, the Allies had cracked Germany's codes. You've probably heard of the Enigma machine, which the British famously broke at Bletchley Park. This intelligence, codenamed Ultra, was a game changer. Every time a German U-boat sent its location, the Allies knew. Every time Hitler issued an order, Allied commanders could read it, sometimes even before the German generals did. It was like playing poker with the ability to see everyone else's cards. But here's the tricky part. They couldn't just act on every piece of information. If they did, the Germans would realize their codes were broken and change them. This led to agonizing decisions. There's a controversial story that Churchill might have known about the devastating bombing of Coventry, but chose not to act to protect the ultra-secret. While debated, it shows the incredible strategic weight of this intelligence. This secret war wasn't just about codes. Allied scientists were constantly analyzing captured German tech, like the V-2 rocket, to find and exploit weaknesses. It was a battle of wits, and technology fought in the shadows. And it was just as crucial as the battles on the front lines. Just when everyone thought the war in Europe was winding down, Hitler threw one last desperate haymaker. It was December 1944, and the Ardennes offensive, better known as the Battle of the Bulge, had just begun. This was Germany's final major attack in the West, and for a terrifying moment, it seemed to be working. German tanks smashed through American lines, creating a massive bulge in the Allied front. The weather was awful, grounding our air support, and American troops found themselves completely surrounded in places like the Belgian town of Bastogne. It looked like a disaster, but this is where American resolve turned the tide. Within days, a flood of reinforcements was rushed to the front lines, and when the skies finally cleared, Allied air power was unleashed with a vengeance. At Bastogne, when the Germans demanded the trapped 101st Airborne surrender, their commander, General McAuliffe, gave a legendary one-word reply: "Nuts!" That single word captured the unbreakable spirit of the Allied forces. The Battle of the Bulge, intended to be a German victory instead, became their death blow. They threw everything they had left, their last reserves of tanks, fuel, and experienced soldiers, into an offensive that ultimately failed. After the Bulge, the German war machine was running on fumes. They had nothing left. By early 1945, the end was in sight. American and British forces were crossing the Rhine River, the last major natural barrier defending Germany's heartland. At the same time, from the east, the massive Soviet Red Army was relentlessly pushing towards Berlin. Germany was being squeezed in a giant vice, crushed from both sides. It was a race to the finish, and the Nazi regime was collapsing. Now here's a fascinating and chilling what-if that most people don't consider. While all this was happening in Europe, the United States was secretly working on the most powerful weapon ever conceived. The Manhattan Project, America's top-secret program to build an atomic bomb, was in a race against time. And here's the mind-blowing part. If Germany hadn't surrendered in May 1945, there's a very real chance the first atomic bomb would have been dropped on a German city, like Berlin, not Hiroshima. Just think about that for a second. The entire course of the Cold War and the post-war world could have been drastically different, but Germany fell before the bomb was ready. On April 30th, 1945, with Soviet troops closing in, Hitler took his own life in his Berlin bunker. Just 1 week later, on May 7th, Germany officially surrendered to the Allies. Victory in Europe was finally achieved. So, when we ask why Nazi Germany lost, the answer is complex. It wasn't just one single thing. It was a combination of overwhelming factors. It was America's colossal industrial might, churning out more tanks, planes, and ships than Germany could ever hope to match. It was the strategic bombing campaign that crippled their factories and war production. It was brilliant intelligence that allowed the Allies to anticipate German moves, like at D-Day. It was a logistical miracle, supplying massive armies across an ocean. And, of course, it was the courage of the individual soldiers who fought their way from the beaches of Normandy all the way to the Rhine. But the deeper truth is that Nazi Germany was doomed from the start. They made a fatal error. They declared war on the world's largest industrial economy while simultaneously invading the Soviet Union, a nation with almost limitless manpower. They essentially picked a fight with the entire world. A German general, reflecting after the war, summed it up perfectly. He said, "We had magnificent soldiers, excellent equipment, and brilliant tactics. What we didn't have was enough of anything to fight the entire world." In the end, tyranny was defeated by the combined strength and resolve of free nations. So here we are, 80 years later, looking back at the moment the United States and its allies broke the back of Nazi Germany. The surrender in that Reims schoolhouse wasn't just the end of a war. It was the end of one world and the start of another. Europe was devastated, 50 million people were dead, and two superpowers were about to start a new conflict that would define the next half-century. The legacy of how America fought this war is still with us. The military-industrial complex that won the war never went away. The intelligence agencies that cracked Enigma evolved into the CIA and NSA. The United States emerged as the most powerful nation on Earth, not because we were strongest at the start, but because we could outproduce, out-innovate, and outlast everyone else. That lesson is still true today. But let's not forget the cost. The victory was real, but it came at a price that should make us think very carefully about war. So, what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the hidden stories of history, hit that subscribe button. Until next time.